Okay, we're going. Here. Okay, Harold. What is your name, sir?
Harold Smith.
And what is today's date?
Today's date is the
9th of September?
9th of September.
2011. And what is your birth date and current address?
Birthday is June 22nd, 1923. Current address is 4230 Dusty Court, Lake Worth, Florida, 33467, apartment 102.
Okay. And my name is Carlton Cartwright, and I am the Executive Director of the Children's Coalition Incorporated. Okay, and the only association, well, the association that we have is that I attend your XBOW meetings on a monthly basis. Harold, tell us what branch of the service did you serve in?
U.S. Air Corps.
Okay. And what was your rank when you separated?
Captain.
What war did you serve in?
World War II.
Where did you serve?
In Italy. I flew out of Italy.
Mm-hmm. Were you drafted or were you enlisted?
Enlisted.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Where were you living at the time that you were enlisted?
Living in the Bronx, New York.
Mm-hmm. Why did you join?
Sorry, Brooklyn, New York.
Brooklyn. Okay. All right. Why did you join?
I joined because of the fact that the war was going on. I was called in to do my part. I volunteered to come into the Air Corps, and they thought they'd be able to finish college, but they didn't let me.
Okay. Why did you pick that service branch?
Because that would give me the chance to finish college.
Do you recall your first days in service?
Yes.
Can you tell us about them? What did it feel like? What was boot camp like? What was your training experience?
Well, my training experience as I went into Atlantic City, New Jersey, and they had basic training of just everyday activity, physical activities, and such to get me active and working out.
Okay. You remember any of your instructors?
No.
Okay. So what were you serving in World War II, you said, I think?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Do you remember arriving? What was that like? When you arrived, what duty station did you arrive at in Europe?
Well, we flew over from United States over through Iceland to going into landing in England, and then in England we were reassigned to Italy, and flew from there to North Africa to Foggia, Italy, where B-17 had 4 groups.
And tell us about it. What was your job assignment?
I was a bombardier. I also had training as a navigator, but I was a bombardier on a B-17.
Okay. And obviously you saw combat.
I flew 23 missions, but when I was shot down.
Okay. Were there many casualties in your unit, or?
There were quite a few in the unit, yes. The day I flew, actually we lost 2 of the crew on the mission.
Okay.
And all the planes were shot down. I don't know. I didn't get any record of how many others were shot down at the same time.
Gotcha. Okay. Tell me about a couple of your most memorable experiences. Were you a prisoner of war?
Yes.
Can you tell us about it?
Tell you about from the beginning, and I was shot down, and I went.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what we'd love to hear.
On a mission, we were assigned were briefed to go to a target in Prague, Czechoslovakia, and I was flying in the deputy lead plane in the area of deputy lead means that if I flew on the right wing of the lead plane, and if the lead plane was not able to finish, we became the lead plane, leading 400 planes going over toward Czechoslovakia. We were not supposed to bomb if it was not a visual run, because of the fact that we did not want the Germans to know that we were knew that they were making jet planes in that area, so that if we didn't bomb unless it was visual, so we flew over the target, and it was cloud covered. My radar operator said he can pick up the target and coordinate with me to bomb it, but we couldn't because his deputy was not a decision to make. The lead plane decided to go to a different target and break up the crew. We became the lead plane leading the bombers toward a railroad station in Bolzano, Italy. And on the mission, we led 200 planes to bomb that field. And we came in from the north because of the fact that we were going back toward Italy. And in the bomb run, I called out 10 seconds the bombs away. And we had 10 seconds of bombs away, the plane got hit by anti-aircraft fire. And I, who swore that I'd never jump out of a plane, never had any training in jumping, called out, "Bombs are away, how's the ship?" And as I looked back, there was no answer. I looked back, I saw the navigator getting ready to put his chute on and fumbling that way. There was no alarm, but I put my chute, I wore my chute on the run, so I took myself off oxygen, went back, and see if it needed any help. As I went back, I saw 2 pairs of feet on the flight deck, meaning the pilot or co-pilot was out of the seat. Of course, usually there's only one person there, the engineer. So I looked to see if I can help the navigator. He said, okay. He told me to pull the emergency by pointing, and I pulled the emergency hatch. Didn't think twice. Jumped. And on the jump, I thought I would off oxygen for a while, so I figured I'd count very quickly to 10 before I pulled the cord. And I was actually too quick because I pulled it while I was still practically at the level of the planes turning for home. Now, the interesting part about this, if we didn't release the bombs on that run, the other planes would have to go around again, because after we dropped the bombs, we had saturation bombing. So that if we dropped the bombs, if the actually didn't see bombs coming out of our planes, some other plane, it was a deputy, would take over and go around again in a circle. But the bombs came out, and the planes were on the way home. So each to give you an idea, each group put up actually 48 planes, and there were 12 planes in each squadron. We were the lead squadron, and therefore the planes all were going home. I saw no other plane, or I didn't see any plane go down, and I was the only chute in the air as I came down. And I didn't know whether he did the right thing by jumping. Everybody went back. So I was kind of afraid that I was jumped too soon. Now, what happened then, as I hanging out there, I maneuvered the chute, which I learned from instructions that if you pull the shroud, you can move it from one way to the other. And as I moved the chute, I maneuvered it away from the city because I definitely didn't want to land in the city we just bombed. So ended up in the mountains. It was the month of February. It was in near the Alps, and it was snow on the ground. I landed up a tree, and not thinking, I released the harness, fell from the tree about 20 feet on my back, and thought that I would, since no one was around, I thought I would go to Switzerland. I started to walk in the snow and found that it was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I figured I'd do better going by night. So I climbed a tree. As I looked at the tree, I climbed the tree. I saw 2 German soldiers with burp guns. Burp guns are like submachine guns, coming, looking at my footsteps in the snow. I had one choice. I had a .45 caliber gun with me to shoot it out with them, or see if I can hide behind a tree to avoid capture. Anyway, because my target practice with a .45 caliber gun was completely zero. I couldn't even hit the target. So I found that I try to hide behind a tree. They saw the footsteps, stopped, looked up, saw me, and they said, "Rouse," meaning come down. I came down. They started to kick and beat me, and they said, "You sergeant?" I said, "No, lieutenant." They said, "Sergeant." They said, beat me more. And then I said, I remember a picture I saw, a movie picture. I said, "Oberleutnant." They stopped, thought they'd have a prize catch, and they took me to town. And took me to town, or jail, and there I found the rest of the crew that was alive. I was told at that time that the co-pilot jumped too late and was killed, and that the engineer also was killed by small arm fire jumping. I was then in a jail. We were taken in an open truck to Germany. On the way to Germany, in Germany, we had to stop in overnight in a railroad station in Munich. Unfortunately, the railroad station was bombed that day, and people passing by thought we were the ones who bombed it, and think could have been lynched at the time. But the guy who was in charge of us being back to Germany was smart enough to take us to a different area, and we went the next day to Germany. on the way up there, saw something very interesting, that along the way you can see trucks, tanks, cars, all parked to the side of the street, all not being able to move. Why? No gas. And they realized at that time that the bombing we did in Ploesti field in Hungary was good enough to be able to get the Germans not able to get the gas to be able to use their arm machine to go that way. It was a contribute to the war effort, which I think is a significant part of it. So the bombing raids that were accomplished, I think, did a very good job. From there I went to, from Munich we went to a place called Oberrussel for interrogation. And there I was questioned about my name, rank, serial number, and wanted to know about the mission. And there they questioned me and told me, the interrogator told me he was had his training at Cornell University in New York, up in New York. And he now was in German, tried to be friendly with me. And as he talked, he asked me if you think that Catholic and Protestant bombardiers had different targets than women and children. Then I knew that he knew I was Jewish, and he told me that if I don't give him the information I want, he'd tell me that Bergen-Belsen. And I didn't know Bergen-Belsen was different from Coney Island. I didn't know where it was. I didn't know it was one of the camps that the Germans used to would take Jewish prisoners and exterminate them. But and I thought one of my crew talked and told them I was Jewish, and found out later on it wasn't so. That the Germans had lists of different graduations. So for officers, they had the listing of home and family and everything else. They got the information from that, so I was happy to know that they wasn't that way. The second day, I found some, I guess, strength, because I called out to the guards and I said, I'm an American officer and I want to actually be interrogated by somebody of equal rank. The guy who interrogated me was a sergeant, and I want to shave and wash and so on and so forth. I guess they felt they get no more out of me then, so they told me I'll be leaving. I was able to wash up a little bit, and that afternoon I was put in charge of 120 men who were also on a prison train. I don't know who else was on there besides that. On the boxcars in a train going to I don't know where, but I got in between this discussion between a couple of fighter pilots who were shot down, and they were told to shoot everything that moves in Germany and tell me all the things they were doing. And surprisingly enough, as soon as the words come out of their mouth, we got strafed by P-51s, not knowing it was a prison train. There were no marking on it at all. So the horrible thing about it was that if it wasn't for these guys, I would have been a part of the ones that were killed, because everybody broke the doors open. There were 3 cars, and they ran to the open field. And I guess the 51 pilots thought it was a troop train. and strafe them. The co-pilots knew the planes made a pass, and they would come back around the other way, so they went under the track and went to the where the bank was on the other side. I with them was able to go with that, picking up 71 dog tags was not a happy scene. We then went on to back in the train on to in Germany, Frankfurt in Germany, a prison camp. In a prison camp, they had people from all areas, Germany, Russians, Australians, and New Zealanders, etc. And the British officers, they're all officers. The people there were treated fairly well. The Russians were the ones that were really put in a different area. They hated the Russians. And by the way, on the interrogation, the German interrogator told me that Americans and the Germans will fight together in the next war against Russia. That was the policy they put in. It was February 16th, 1945, and it was coming pretty close to the end of the war, and I think the Germans were thinking about what they're going to do in any way whatsoever for the future. Anyway, we're at this camp, and after a while, the food was very sparse. I must have lost about 40 pounds while I was there. Get German news reports all the time. The German news reports came in where the person giving the report would be telling that they were advancing in old times. The Britain's people that were there, they were picked up from Dunkirk, had crystal radios, and their reports from the BBC were completely different. The reports they got were that they were advancing. They were actually, by looking at a map, retreating. And so we get the feeling that they were actually giving us the information they got. It was propaganda. And one day we opened up and said German propaganda, and the German guy gave us the report, practically had tears in his eyes, saying, "Who are you young punks to tell me that it's German propaganda when everything I hear is the truth? I know, and what you hear is the phony information." And it gave me an idea of thinking that the Germans would get actually propagandized, that the fact of thinking that they were actually doing things that were not really publicized, and giving a feeling to the even to the their own army that the war was going well. And a funny thing about that, every night there were bombing raids. The British coming in at night bombed by having mosquitoes come over and drop flares on targets that they were going to flare. The Germans caught wise to it and just dropped flares over prison camps. The British knew what they were doing, so they dropped different colored flares. And then what happened then was that the Germans put up different colored flares. At a bombing raid, the British come in, looked like it was going to be a New Year's Eve celebration, flares all over the place, and it was a kind of a color of the day that the British bombed by, and it was surprising to me if there were any accuracy with the bombs, and feeling that what we did was more accurate and get better results. At any rate, after a while, being in the camp, we were told that we're going to evacuate the camp on a forced march. The colonel in charge was a man named Colonel Good, an American out of West Point. And he told the group of Führer that why move us? Actually, you leave us here, they have us coming in, we'll liberate, or so on and so forth. And the group of Führer said, we'll only keep prisoners as long as they're useful to us. And I happened to be there at the time the colonel talked to the group of Führer, and he said, and anybody who makes any attempt to escape, the SS will be behind, and they in turn will kill them. Interesting part, we went on a forced march. The third day out, the SS came in with two people that they caught trying to escape, and told the colonel, we're going to execute him. And the colonel said to him, I know you, and I know you. If you touch one hair on their head, I'll have your life. And they backed off. And they went on that way. 2 days later, it was a pouring rain. And 17,000 were on the march. And they circled the area all around. I and 4 other fellows went into an old farmhouse, and just to get out of the rain, and covered ourselves with hay, went to sleep. Next morning we got up and looked out and saw the group starting at the end of it, starting to walk south. And we had to make a decision. Do we catch up, safety in numbers, or do we try to escape? Well, the decision was the 5 of us, we tried to escape. And what we decided to do is stay till night, walk by night, stay in the place at night, not move, by day, and walk by night. Anyway, we had a important thing, hard thing we had was we had to go the rivers going toward going back toward the west to get to where we wanted to get to, which toward the American lines. And we heard the bombing coming through, so we knew we were close, but we couldn't go on bridges because the Germans were on all the bridges. So we had to wade the water, and it was cold, but we made it, ate grass, things like that. And then 5th day out, one of our men who spoke German saw a farmhouse by itself, spoke to the woman, says the Americans are coming, and she would be rewarded if she would take care of us until they came. The actual part of it was she was a widow. Her husband was killed in the war, took us in, and we're there for 2 days. What happened was that 2 days later, the Third Army came, and in tanks. And as we were cheering, they shot at us because they thought we were Germans. But after they came out and picked us up, took us to Camp Lucky Strike, we were the first ones there. We started it. The traveled group was very unhappy. We traveled the officers that were taking care of it, because they thought they were going home, and because they were getting starting a prisoners coming back, they started a lucky strike as a base for it. We were the first ones in, and we found that they were really knew nothing that was going on. So I and a couple of other people got ourselves a ride to from France to England on a carrier, and in England we arranged to get transportation back to the States, and we arrived in the States about Mother's Day 1945. Got home with the family, and that was the area. The full story of my life is the fact that when I got home, I tried everything I could to block out what the experience in the service, because I knew I was going to go back to college, and I knew I couldn't build a career on my service history. So what I did, I could do it very easily. I met a psychologist, a psychiatrist later on, and another psychologist to try to help me forget. And I did a good job with that because of the fact nobody I ever met going back to school knew I was in the service. Until one day in the year 1999, I get a call. What happened was that I get a call from a woman who said to me, I got your name from the 97th Bomb Group. They have meetings every year, and she went down there to find out about her father, who was in the 97th Bomb Group, was killed on a mission. And what happened with her was that her mother, when she was 10, told her that the man she was living with was not her father, that her father was killed in World War II, and wouldn't say anything more about it. Her mother died, and then she went on a mission to find out more about her father, because she found letters that she thought were very interesting. And then she, in turn, actually went and found out he was in the 97th Bomb Group, and she went to the 97th Bomb Group meetings they had every year. I never went there because I didn't want to get involved with any of the things happening. I didn't even know about it. But she found out that nobody knew her husband or any details, but they traced back that the mission she was on, gave her the names of the people who were on the plane. And one of the people in the group told her that he writes to me every year, and he knew I was on that plane. So she called me, and when she called me, asked me about it, want to know more about her father. I said, I do not really know too much about him. That mission we flew on was the first time I ever flew with him. And I can feel the expression that she had when she heard that I couldn't tell her anymore. But I said to her, you know, come to think of it, your father was a hero. Was he ever recognized for what he had done in the war? She said she didn't know. So I told her I'd find out. Anyway, I called up the group, found out if he ever got any medals or recognition. Am I on too long?
Huh? No, keep going.
get any recognition.
Mm-hmm.
So they told me, gave me a name of a guy to call to find out who keeps records for the service. And actually, the guy, Jack Foggy, was a colonel, retired, who kept records of all the service areas. And I asked him, what do you do to get a medal for a guy who wasn't recognized before? And he said, well, you got to get a statement that goes to the Army and get a statement from all the living members of the crew to verify exactly what happened. So I said, who are the members of the crew that are alive? Anyway, gave me the navigator, who was a part of my original crew, the radar operator, and a radio operator. Everybody else has died since. And actually, I gave me the names and numbers. They couldn't locate the radio operator, but he gave me the names and numbers of the radio operator still alive, because the insurance was never claimed by his family. I got a hold of the navigator, I got a hold of the radar operator, and we all told the story of what happened. What did happen was, when we got hit, the left wing was shot off. The pilot immediately left the seat to bail out. The co-pilot fought the controls. The co-pilot was her father. And he fought the controls and kept the plane afloat so that we can finish the bomb run. Actually, I looking at the bomb site, knew that the plane was still on course. And we released the bombs. If we didn't release them, that whole 200 planes had to go around again and finish the mission. And so therefore it could have been more casualties. Actually, the Bolzano was actually about 20,000 feet above sea level. That means the anti-aircraft planes, guns, were actually at a higher level, facing the planes. Would be much easier to shoot them down, because the B-17s in formation, easy targets. We were a lead plane. I don't know how many planes were lost on it, but so therefore he saved the lives of us, and he saved the lives of the people behind us. And I found out from Jack Foggy what pictures we destroyed the target. So I wrote up the story about what happened, and so on and so forth. And we then submitted that the letters to Senator Graham, because I was in Florida, and Senator Graham was the guy to get it to his office. Actually, the thing was that at that time, the woman was from Milwaukee, but the report came in there. He told me, after they wrote it up, that what kind of a medal you want to get for him. And I said, well, I don't know what. He said, how about a Distinguished Flying Cross? I said, I got a Distinguished Flying Cross. He did much more than I ever did. He said, how about a Silver Star? I said, all right, Silver Star. We put in for a Silver Star. He called me later on and said, by the way, it's going to be tough doing it, because we got to get the report from the radio operator. I said, why the radio operator? we got 3 officers on a plane. He's the only other one alive. He said we need a report from him. I didn't know why, but he was from New York. I was from New York, and I thought I would actually get to him and find out, because I knew what kind of business he was in. I called around, nothing. Amazingly, a month later, I see an obituary in the New York Times. The obituary was the same last name with a brother with the same first name of the I was looking for. So I called the chapel on a chance, and I said to them, I'm calling to see if this was a guy was in the 15th Air Force, the brother, and if so, have him call me. We need it for a story. Anyway, found out he was the guy, and actually, I found out now why he needed the story. He identified the body of the co-pilot, and the service wanted to know whether he was in the plane and crashed in the plane. That means he actually with fright kept the controls, and or if he jumped, he would be able to know that he kept the plane so everybody else can get out. But if he froze on the controls, he would have gone down with the plane. The body was a mile away from the plane, and that's clinched the story for the medal. About another part comes in the story that a guy named Tom Brokaw called me and said to me, I heard about your story, and we are doing a TV show. He wrote The Greatest Generation. We did a TV show, and we'd like to know if we're picking 4 stories, and most likely yours wouldn't be called because we got only going to pick 4 to be on a TV show in the year 2000. And would I be willing to talk to the story? Anyway, I said yes. Well, this woman, finally, a few days later, he said, we're going to do your story. It was a human interest story. The woman who looked for her father and found it was part of the segment in the year 2000 of Tom Brokaw's show.
Right.
The actual deal is that we did a show, and we did 9 hours of taping over here in Florida, and they only had about 10, 12 minutes of the show. But I do volunteer tutoring at school. They even have pictures of me tutoring the kids. But the thing that I get a kick out of was the fact that Tom Brokaw put the show on before anything had happened with his award. The award came 2 months later, so they didn't have any knowledge of it. It was in Milwaukee, because that's where he came from, and the Silver Star was presented to her. When I told the story of what happened on the mission, there were 3 generals, 4 colonels, and a whole squadron of men. One of the colonels came to me and said, this guy should have gotten the Congressional Medal of Honor. And the thing was, I didn't know, but that was the story about how the service felt about what he did. And that was the story ending up my career. I came from there. They told me to get in touch with the VA. I never took any part of it. The VA came in, met these guys. In the story, that came up, one of the questions I was asked by Brokaw's crew,
Right.
you were in a war, you were in a depression. Don't you consider yourself the greatest generation? I said, no. Every generation passed on to the other. We didn't have the internet, we didn't go to the moon, we didn't do other things. So we just a part of it. But when I got here and spoke to the fellas, I realized what this country did in getting troops, tanks, ships, men, equipment, and having them directed in 3 different continents where we were in the period of the war in Iraq. We couldn't get equipment there. What this country did logistically was the greatest feat I've ever could think of in any kind of an area, to be able to do what it did, to get this all done and do it successfully. Our ships were better than their ships. Our planes were better than their planes. Our men equipment were better than theirs. The Germans didn't have any heavy bombers. The Japanese didn't have any heavy bombers. The whole planning of this whole thing was different. And I found out later on, in looking at editions from the book, that the British warned us that we can't bomb by day. And daylight bombing was really a key to the victory of this. And amazing to me that this country did what it did, and that gave me into an area where I got the whole of this group and realized all the efforts that went into World War II. They felt that we were the greatest generation. Gave me a different twist on life.
Oh, good for you.
That's the story.
I got you. What did you do after the? Did you ever use your GI Bill for school?
Yeah. Oh, well, I didn't have to because I went to a free school in New York.
Okay.
I played football.
Mm-hmm.
I coached football.
Mm-hmm.
And then I decided coaching was not the future. I went into the retail business.
Oh.
And in the end, I ended up by running 2 major companies and being very successful in retailing.
Well, good.
What else you want to know?
I think that you probably covered everything, as a matter of fact. You got it all.
Well, I realized I didn't look at the camera as much as I should have, but I was just getting back memory of what went on. So, that's it.
Basically, yes, just one last question.
Yeah.
Did your military experience influence your thinking about war, about the military in general?
Yes.
In what way?
That war should not be fought. They're horrible. By the way, I and 3 other guys make a circuit of going to various schools, colleges, and everything else to tell them about World War II. Not so much on experiences, but the idea of the really wars are horrible, not to be fought if you can avoid it. And the feeling we have is to let people know what World War II was all about and why it was fought, so that generations will be picking up and understanding it, because I don't think too many people know about World War II and what it meant to everybody. And it's unfortunately, as I look at where the war in Iraq and the war in Afghanistan, you don't get a feeling of the whole country behind those wars as it was, that everybody in America was in World War II. They were behind these services and everything else like that. And my feeling is that it's not the same. And I think that the horrors of war I just impossible to describe. So that's my
Okay.
feeling.
All right, well, Harold, I want to thank you very much.
Okay,
Okay, and really appreciate you giving us this interview.
all right.